All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you, WS, for having us today. Very excited to be opening up the conference with this crowd today. Certainly feels like a bit of a bear market crowd, but we appreciate the conviction and we appreciate that you're here. So, NIKHIL, I thought maybe we would just start, this is meant to be like a casual sort of riff conversation about roadblocks for Web 3.0. Maybe the way I might think about it is unlocks for the next wave of Web 3.0. But why don't we just start with some quick intros? Maybe you can introduce yourself and maybe just tell us as well, like, why is crypto important to you?
Sure. Thank you, and great to see you all. Thanks for having us here. So just by way of quick background, I work for a company called Emurgo. We are one of the founding entities of the Cardano blockchain. We're headquartered here in Singapore. We have a number of products and services in the fintech space, education space, media, and we also have a ventures arm with a specifically strong lens on Africa. I'm the COO for the group. My background is traditional finance, so I was with a global bank for about 16 years before I took the plunge into blockchain and crypto. It's nice to see that we have some people in this room relative to the one at the end, which is AI, where I think it just shows you how some of the tide is turning on some of this. But it's all Web3, so it's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to this. Thank you.
Wonderful. And by way of introduction for myself, my name is HASSAN. I'm the country director for Singapore at Coinbase. My crypto journey spans back in 2013, where I fell down the proverbial rabbit hole and sort of never really came back out since. I've been with a number of operating companies, exchanges, brokerages, and so on, and helped them sort of scale across in the US, in the Philippines, and now in Singapore, and just broadly Southeast Asia as well. I'd say that for me, the reason why kind of crypto is so important and why we're talking about this today, even despite all the turbulence that's happened, is that, ultimately, where sort of a lot of my conviction being part of Coinbase is that I still firmly believe that crypto and blockchain is the highest leverage technology that we have for upgrading the financial system. I think if you look around, it's pretty obvious that, this is where financial services is today. This is not the best we can do. There's so much more to go. And this technology really is breakthrough and very exciting. And even though it's been a journey of 10, 11 years, across for blockchain, it's still very, very early days. And I think there's still a ton of potential and a lot of work to be done. And that's also reflected, within the community as well. The kind of passion and the ethos that people bring to this space, along with capital allocators and other ecosystem participants. I think it's very, very inspiring to see. So even though we're kind of going through this cycle, I'm still very, very energized to come into work every day and sort of make sure that we're moving the space forward.
Very good. So we're here to talk about roadblocks to mass adoption. Where would you like to start?
Well, why don't we just do a quick pulse check, maybe from your perspective as well, of where you think we are, in terms of the cycle and evolution, and then maybe we can springboard into the next bit.
Sure. So I think holistically speaking, we're super early days in what blockchain and crypto can do. Yes, it's been around for over 10 years now, but it's not really touched the mainstream. I think if we look at words like Web3 or crypto or blockchain, okay, may have had its genesis, let's say, with some would say with the publication of the Bitcoin white paper, but probably predates that a little bit anyway. But really, there's been an evolution since then where even that terminology means different things to different people, right? And so what you have now is maybe conflation is a bit of a strong word, but I would say certainly a bit of a mishmash of what the technology and what it represents conceptually, philosophically, and practically for different people. And so we're at this, we've been through a few bear markets now, and I guess there's a lot of anticipation now that there's going to be a flood of institutional adoption, and that will kind of help the industry mature, but also act as a segue to mass adoption theoretically. Right, and so I think that's cool, theoretically, but practically there needs to be a lot more kind of raising awareness to help governmental level, corporate level, and at the individual level understand what all of this means and what the potential it brings to everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you sort of look at maybe just some of the cycles that have gone through, like what's your estimation of where we are in terms of a snapshot?
I guarantee that we'll be out of this bear market. I think, no, I think we've, certainly from about 2017, there was a lot of players in this space. There was a lot of activity. Some of it, I think, fair to say, well, definitely accurate to say, was smoke and mirrors. And I think we're at a point as a result of this particular bear market to be able to separate wheat from chaff, right? And so people are focusing on really trying to figure out what is the need, what is the demand where things are not so efficient today, what is the new opportunity that blockchain brings that we didn't have prior to the applications of blockchain. And so that is going to be very interesting, I think, to see what actually comes out of this particular cycle in terms of application, right? And we need to move, I think, away from talking about how the technology works and being able to talk to the non-technologists to say, this is how you can use it, right? This is a very sort of simplistic way of thinking about it, but this industry will have done its job when no one talks about the technology.
Yeah, and just building on that, I guess my simplistic way of thinking about it is in terms of money crypto and tech crypto. And so I think there's a lot of attention and headlines that maybe the financial side brings, especially because these native crypto assets are liquid and priced in real time. And just from that basis, we've kind of gone through what's I would call like our fourth cycle. But I think what's more exciting is on the tech crypto side of things, where it's less volatile and more stable, and that's more kind of consistent up and to the right. So we've gone through this consolidation phase and a reset, and there's certain macro factors around it as well. But I think when I look at what the actual build activity is and like the monthly active developer chart, for Ethereum and other related ecosystems, I think those look pretty healthy and pretty resilient despite everything that the industry's gone through. So I think that's a pretty big reason to be optimistic that even sort of in 2023, having gone through what I would consider, we've been through the worst of it for this cycle, it's still coming out pretty healthy. And I think we've effectively de-risked sort of the question of, hey, is crypto going to be around to stay, which was still a question in the past cycle. But now it's more a question of, okay, how big is this thing going to get? Is it just DeFi and financial services, or is it broader than that, like mainstream consumer applications and tech models? So I think that's the stuff that really is exciting to think about it as well.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on an interesting point. I think some people want to talk about blockchain and crypto as if they're one thing, and some people want to try and separate the nuance between those two things. And there's, I guess, certainly for a public permissionless blockchain, they kind of go hand in hand. But there is, I guess, part of the roadblock to mass adoption is understanding the nuance between the two. And so while there's a lot of focus on, say, should we say, speculation of crypto prices, I think what people need to understand is what's underlying that is the value that the blockchain will ultimately bring. And that goes to, I think, what you're describing as tech crypto, right? So what is the inherent value that a blockchain can bring to a particular problem statement or to a particular opportunity? And that will ultimately determine the price of the crypto, right? And so I think part of it is helping people understand that nuance and again, a bit of conflation of terminology, right? And getting everyone on the same page.
Yeah, so one of the cool things about being a Coinbase, being sort of this global scale platform is we service consumers, institutions, and developers in terms of our business line. So I'm very privileged to just have like a broader view on what is going across in the crypto economy. And one of the cool stats that we released some time ago is that over 50% of users on Coinbase are now doing things other than trading. And I think that speaks to just the increasing kind of the flourishing of other kinds of activities that you can actually do, and users are starting to pick up on it as well. So it could be things like send, receive transmissions, or just basic kind of storage, staking starting to really pick up as well, participating in the underlying security of blockchains, even other products like Coinbase Card and whatnot. And so I think it's really kind of starting to pick up at this point, especially with all of these use cases that are coming in. So maybe why don't we just sort of take that cue and kind of springboard off of that and talk about use cases. So one of the big things that refrains that we hear as well is, hey, it's been a decade. Where are the use cases? So why don't we start there and tell us what you think?
Sure. So I mean, certainly, I think the biggest one is DeFi, right? So what can we do there putting a TradFi lens on it for a second, there's a whole bunch of stuff which is inefficient at the moment, right? From clearing, settlement, the need for intermediaries where perhaps there doesn't need to be. And so DeFi is a very obvious use case of where some of that, or a lot of that, can be solved pretty quickly. We've seen provenance, right, is quite away from the sort of traditional finance space, just tracking, proving authenticity, right? This is quite an interesting one in that, you know, it goes past the financial space into just people wanting to understand what am I actually eating or drinking or consuming in some way, and is it legit, right? Is it authentic? And then I guess another use case that we've seen a lot of is the NFT use case, right? So here again, proving authenticity, proving scarcity. I do personally think the label NFT needs to disappear, right? Because again, it's not about the technology per se, it's about what you're able to prove by using that technology, right? And I think that's where we've seen most of the traction so far. But but again, I do think we're really at the beginning of this curve, so there's more to come.
Absolutely, I agree with everything you said. The way that we've what we've used as an organizing framework internally is these three kind of blocks. Crypto as an investment, crypto as financial services, and crypto as an operating system. And so what we've seen is, you know, most of the activity has been concentrated on like the investment side for a long time. But I think this past cycle, especially with DeFi kind of breaking out, that's where like financial services like activities have started on-chain in a really robust way. And I think to your point, it wasn't until NFTs came around that the promise of, hey, what else can blockchain enable really started kind of coming, you know, in a more tangible way. I mean, who would have thought that putting JPEGs of, you know, monkey pictures like on the blockchain would sort of change how we think about it? But I think that's really what is now being termed as Web3 in a way, right? To describe that like broader, expansive activities that can even sort of go beyond. But I would even argue that on some level, like the use cases are here already and they are being used. They're maybe just not as publicized as much. The point of like, Bitcoin in the beginning being a store of value, I think there's a lot of merit and promise there. I think that stablecoins have really kind of changed the game in terms of, what other use cases are starting to come on chain as well. Things like, I think payments probably, I'd say, we've been talking about payments for a long time, but because now, especially USD denominated stablecoins are so prevalent, I'd say that we're probably on the cusp of that next unlock on the payments wave as well. And one of the things that excites me is, non-USD FX also coming on chain. But the other really cool trend that's kicked off in this cycle is this broader theme around real world assets. And it started with tokenized T-bills or short-term kind of government bonds. But I do think that this thing has gone from 0 to 1 and now is starting to get into that 1 to 10 phase, and I'm excited to see more on that as well. Yeah,
so interestingly, that kind of use case was what really brought me from traditional finance into this space. So I did a lot of work around securitization when I was in TradFi, and let's say you wanted to refinance Marina Bay Sands, right? Typically, it's only institutional investors that are getting a hand in that game, right, in that play. Whereas now, with the ability to tokenize that financing and fractionalize off the back of that, you have the ability, you have the opportunity to give someone with, say, $10 of investable assets an opportunity to accrete their wealth. And I think that's extremely powerful. Of course, we need to get to some pragmatics like liquidity and people understanding how to get access and getting past some of the terminology, which I keep sort of banging on about this point around conflation and education and raising awareness. But I think that's fine, we will get there. But there's some really strong, very powerful use cases in that space. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about policy and regulations. I feel like you can't have a crypto conference or a panel without talking about policy, right? And I do think that is, for me, like one of the biggest roadblocks / unlocks to the space. So I'm happy to kind of kick off on that.
Please. Yeah. I'm sure you've got quite a lot to say about it.
So look, our joke internally is that these days maybe Coinbase is a policy company that happens to make products on the side. But it's just because we see policy as just one of the biggest things in the space that we have to get right. There's just no two ways about it. We're excited when regulators engage with us. We're excited when regulators recognize the potential of this emerging technology and they want to harness it for their ecosystems as well. In fact, in many ways, I'd say like Asia is much further ahead on this front. So sort of the one kind of quick trivia factor is that actually Japan, Philippines, Thailand were one of the first ones to have like a codified crypto legislative framework. And that's something that they recognize us early on. So I think many Asian regulators actually are pretty early to the game. I think Singapore is doing a fantastic job as well, just in terms of providing like a clear rule book. Sure, there's a lot of debate on the margins of like what are some of these things that we have to get right, but we as Coinbase as the most trusted brand, like we love when like we get a clear rule set of things that we can follow and creates a level playing field. Hong Kong's kind of coming into the game, Japan's sort of coming back, Dubai, UAE's stepping up as well. So I think it's pretty exciting that this year, especially like all of this regulatory engagement has really kind of gone up a few notches. We're looking forward to other regulatory regimes also providing more clarity. But that still looks like that's one of the big things for the entire space in order to be able to grow and move forward as well.
100%, I agree with all of that. I think what's really interesting is that with this technology and how nascent it is, as you say, the Asian regulators have been on the front foot. Whereas if you were to compare to, say, a traditional finance context, it's more the other way, right? Where Europe would typically lead. The US kind of always does its own thing anyway, right? And then the Asian regulators would kind of follow suit. So here, the Asian regulators are being much more on the front foot. They're being much more embracing of, let us see what you're doing, let's work with you, let's try and understand this, which is extremely positive in my mind. I think what it runs a very high risk, and we're seeing it already, of there being an unlevel playing field globally, right? And I think certain countries will miss out on an opportunity here, right? And I think if I'm going to say one thing about where the regulators, I think, need to kind of be a little more open-minded, is that whatever framework you're going to apply, you kind of need to recognize that this is a very new space. So you can't necessarily take old frameworks and apply them to this technology or to this industry, because you're going to end up with a round peg in a square hole. And sometimes that disjoint may be pretty significant. So very encouraging that the regulators, particularly in this part of the world, are being very open-minded in how they think about it. I think that there's more to be done in terms of that square peg round hole kind of scenario I'm talking about. I would also say, just to draw a distinction between, say, someone like Coinbase and someone like Emurgo, where we're perhaps more closer to the building on blockchain side of things than we are with, say, certainly being an exchange or trading activity, is that I think the layer ones, the layer twos, i.e. not the sort of trading and exchange platforms, need to be a bit more at the table with the regulators to help them understand some of this nuance between, as I say, blockchain and crypto, and what the use case use cases might be. And generally speaking, there's a lot more education and awareness that needs to be done at again, all levels, governmental, corporate, and individual level. And the regulators are a subset of that. So, but overall, yeah, very positive.
Yeah, 100%. One thing that we're very passionate about is making sure that open source software is preserved as such. And the whole sort of code-to-speech line is a bright line that should not be crossed. So even at Coinbase, even though people think about us as just a kind of a CeFi platform, we actually are incubating Base, which is sort of a layer 2 on top of the Ethereum blockchain as well. We also have self-custodial products like Coinbase Wallet. And we've had many regulatory conversations about making sure that those are preserved as such, that they're effectively code, that it's open and permissionless, that anyone can access and run as software effectively. So completely agree with that. I think there's also just other concepts, that for regulated services and activities, we welcome, that level of regulation, because I think concepts like, AML, CFT, market integrity, business conduct, cybersecurity, all of those things that apply to TradFi and FinTech, those concepts are all valid for regulated services like fiat on-ramps. We just ask that, there should be some balance between innovation and protection. And one of the things we're also passionate is about making sure that retail access is preserved as well, because this is ultimately an individual empowerment game, and that's what we want to make sure that everyone is able to access this technology as well.
Very good. I think we're coming towards the end of our session, so should we maybe talk about how we would fix it if we had a week? What would you point to as perhaps the key thing that needs to be addressed to really push us to mass adoption?
Yeah, I guess pulling back up a little bit, like you said earlier, I think it's important to recognize that we're still early in the game. I do think that there's green shoots everywhere if you know where to look for it in terms of, hey, where is blockchain and crypto actually sort of moving the ball forward in terms of real utility, real use cases, and making sure that there's concepts around like financial empowerment that are happening. And more often than not, they're actually not happening in most developed markets. They're happening in the global south for the most part. So I think just preserving that and getting more focus on just open access, I think, is crucial. I think one of the things that we didn't touch on is just more kind of infrastructure level concepts around scalability as well, and those are, as well as security. So those are things that are being worked on by the industry. I'm pretty optimistic we'll get there, just sort of given the amount of brain power and capital that's being thrown at it. But I think these other things that we mentioned, just having kind of clear rule books, making sure that actually at the application layer, there's a little more rotation towards that sort of for this coming cycle, as well as things around concepts around like infrastructure and access. Those are probably the magic ingredients, I'd say, to get us to that next 10 to 100x that we're all excited about.
Very good. If I'm going to have a stab at it, I'm going to say making this world accessible. So that means doing away with some of the terminology. Let's not use exoteric language. Let's make it easy for people to understand what they're dealing with. In a way, focus on application rather than how the technology works itself. And I think user-friendliness on applications, I think, is a big one as well.
All right, wonderful. I think that's all the time we have. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.